Close your eyes. Breathe. Not the shallow breath of a world that asks too much of you. A deeper breath, the kind that reaches places you have forgotten to tend. Again, inhale. And as you exhale, release the architecture of your ordinary day. The noise of it, the weight of it, the endless negotiation with a world that measures and defines and expects. Let it grow distant, not with effort, simply with breath. It was never as permanent as it felt. There is another world, a world beneath this one. Not beneath the ground, though the old ones have always loved the deep places. I speak of a place beneath the surface, a place secreted behind a veil that most eyes have forgotten how to see, a veil that most minds have forgotten how to pass through. But your soul will always remember this path. When you reconnect with your soul, you realize you know this veil, and you discover this hidden world that has always been there. It is older than the names our eldest ancestors gave it, older than the traditions that tried to contain it. And you're here because this world, where the old ones live, is calling to you, calling you to encounter the ones who were never fully contained, the ones who refused, the ones who were cast out, and the ones who simply walked away. All of them found something truer than anything the unveiled world has to offer. They gave us their stories to teach us, to guide us, and for some, to bring them here. They are not gone. They are not myth. They are here in the old dark, in the depths, in the heights, in the wild places, and in the tranquility between heartbeats. They are waiting patiently for you. Are you ready to reconnect with your soul, to return to this other world? You have been here before. Perhaps not in this life, but deep in your cells, you remember the way. Breathe deep. Reach within. Access that knowing. Watch with your inner eyes as your cells begin to glow with that remembering. Feel that light of remembering expand, brighten. Feel the light of remembering lift you. Now, follow that remembering. Follow it into the liminal mist. Follow it across the veil. Here, now, fully embrace this moment that stands outside of time. Slowly, the mists part. You're not here to escape, not to flee. You're here to remember. This place has been waiting for you to find your way back. The one who waits for you. They chose this dark. They chose it freely, eyes open, and never once looked back. She was given a name that became a warning, a story that became a weapon. She was written into the margins of other people's scripture as a monster, as something to be feared, something to be fled from, something that justified the building of walls, the making of rules, and the long, exhausting project of telling women what they were and were not allowed to be. But that is not her story. That is someone else's fear, dressed in a costume that they said was her own clothing. Her story begins where the garden ends, at the threshold where the tended, cultivated, labeled, and pigeonholed ground gives way to topography allowed to be natural, to a landscape that was never planted, never pruned, never shaped to please a particular vision or expectation. Her story begins with a single, daring and courageous step onto wild earth, and the sudden revelation that here, everything is different. This realm, her realm, asks nothing of you. She took that step, not in rage, though she had every right to rage. She stepped not in grief, though leaving always has a cost, even when your departure is the truest thing you have ever done. She took that step with the full knowledge of what she was choosing and what she was releasing. And the wilderness received her, the way deep water receives a stone, completely, without judgment, and closing in around her as though she had always been there, as though she had come home. And in the centuries since, in the long, unwitnessed life that she has lived in this place that belongs entirely to her, she has learned something that the tended world, with all its noise and striving and measuring and defining of worth, has never been able to teach. She has learned what it feels like to simply be. Not to perform being, not to negotiate being, not to justify being or shaping it to fit someone else's comfort. She learned simply to exist in the dark, in the wild, in the patient and receiving silence of a place that has never once asked her to be anything other than exactly what she already is. That is where she will take you if you ask. The mists around you thin slowly, the way dawn arrives, not in a single moment, but like molasses flowing. These gradual, almost imperceptible shifts are revealing, but not brightening. There is no dawn here, but the dark bears itself, and what it unveils is not absence, it is presence, a fullness, a depth that is entirely, unapologetically comfortable and content with itself. You stand on wild earth. Beneath your feet, it is the soft, accumulated tenderness of centuries of fallen leaves and living moss. It is the slow, patient work of roots moving through soil that has never been turned by a plow, never been measured into rows, never been told what it was supposed to grow. It gives slightly beneath your weight, as though it is breathing, as though it is aware of you. And it is, in the way that truly ancient things are aware. Not with urgency, not with agenda, but with the deep, unhurried recognition of one living thing acknowledging another. Take a step. Feel this earth receive you. Take another step. The wilderness extends in every direction, vast and unself-conscious, unbothered by its own edges, unconcerned with where it begins or ends. There are trees here, old trees, the kind whose roots were threading through dark soil before anyone thought to classify them, before anyone decided that some things are sacred and some things are not. Their trunks are wide. You pause to lean against one. Its solidity feels like the oldest kind of reassurance. Their canopy above is dense and layered and alive. And through it, in the gaps where the branches part, the fragments of visible sky are so dark it seems less like stratosphere and more like a stretch of living, breathing velvet. And the stars, they are not the polite, distant stars of the world you came from. These stars are closer, older. They burn with a cold, white fire. Their ancient flames were burning long before anyone existed. They have no names. No constellation defines or binds them. They simply are, radiant and indifferent and breathtakingly present. Breathe. The air here is different. You noticed it before, in the moment of crossing. But now, standing fully inside this place, you can feel the difference. It is cooler than the air you are used to, cleaner. It carries the scent of dark earth and living green. Yet there is potency swirling beneath both of those. The potency of time, the birth of minerals, and the deep and faintly electric smell of the wind racing before a storm. It is the scent of a place where anything that has not yet been decided still has the freedom to become or to change. Again, breathe. And notice as you exhale that something leaves with it, something you have been carrying without realizing the weight of it. The air here does not claim what you release. It simply receives and disperses it, returning it to the wilderness where it dissolves. It is finally finished with you. Now, listen. The wilderness seemed silent at first, the way any rich and layered thing seems simple until you give it your full attention. But there is sound here. The air moves lazily through leaves so high above that they seem to belong to a different world entirely. And there is water nearby, not rushing, not urgent, just flowing, as if it has all the time in existence and nowhere in particular to be. Some small creature shifts in the undergrowth, going about the ancient business of simply living, unbothered by your presence. And beneath all of it, beneath the leaves and the water and the small hidden movements of living things, a stillness. Not the stillness of emptiness. That was what you noticed earlier. But now, as the dark continues to reveal itself, you know this stillness is full. Pause here for a moment. Feel into that still fullness. It is not hungry. It is content. It is not assessing. It is accepting. Nothing here is cataloging your worth or measuring your success. Nothing here is deciding whether you are enough or too much, or whether you fit the shape of what was wanted or expected or required. You have grown so accustomed to the appraisal of your waking world that this absence of it feels like surfacing from deep water to gasp the open air. Spread your arms wide and let this wilderness see you. You are simply here, and here is enough. Now, we go deeper, not away from this place, deeper into it, into the dark that has been waiting patiently beneath even this, into the stillness beneath this stillness, into the part of yourself that has always remembered this deepest domain. The part of you that has waited for this restorative return, the part of you beckoning, gently guiding you to this medicinal moment. I am going to count down from 10 to 1. With each count, feel yourself settle further into the wilderness, further into the dark, further into the self that exists beneath every layer the waking world placed upon you. By the time we reach 1, you will be entirely and peacefully here, more present in this place than you have ever been, more present in yourself than perhaps you have been in a very long time. 10. The earth beneath you grows more real, more solid, more ancient. Through the soles of your feet, you feel the roots beneath, spreading through the dark in every direction. Patient and purposeful, unhurried and deliberate. 9. The air moves through the canopy above, cool and alive as it glides across your skin. It shepherds the electric wildness that belongs exclusively to this deep, deep place. 8. Your body grows heavier, not with exhaustion, with equanimity, a serene presence of mind. You can feel that you have finally stopped moving, finally stopped bracing, finally allowed yourself to simply rest where you are. 7. The sounds of the wilderness expand around you. The distant water, the slow breath of ancient trees, small unhurried movements of living things existing naturally and at ease in their being, in their purpose. You are part of this world, this soundscape now. Your breath and your presence contribute to the collective unity here. You belong here as much as any of it does. 6. Halfway. Feel the difference. Feel the distance. The waking world is not gone, but its noise, its measurements, its endless and exhausting appetite for your compliance is very far away, growing smaller, growing quieter. 5. The darkness wraps you like the softest living velvet, like a presence that has chosen you as deliberately as you have chosen it. It is neither cold nor threatening. It is the embrace of a world that has no interest in changing you, only in holding you exactly as you are. 4. Sinking deeper into the velvet quiet, into the tranquility beneath thought, where intuition and knowing lives. where the oldest parts of you have been kept safe and whole, patiently waiting for exactly this moment. Three. Though you cannot yet see her, you can feel her, the way you feel someone in a room before you turn to find them. A new, sweetly fragrant warmth weaves along the edges of the wilderness. A resonant sentience that is not unfamiliar, that is ancient, patient, curious, and completely without demand. 2. Almost there. Release the last of the waking world's weight. All of it. Let it drift away. You do not need it here. It will be waiting when you return, and you will return changed, though the world will not immediately know it. Let that worldly weight sink into the dark earth that asks nothing and receives everything. One. You are here, completely here, in the oldest dark, in the wildest quiet, in the sanctuary she chose. And now, in this moment outside of time, she offers this sanctuary to you. Rest here for a moment before we move deeper still. This place may take some getting used to. Not the dark itself, not the wilderness or its sounds, or the ancient breathing presence of it. Those things your soul recognized immediately, the way it recognizes all things it has always known. What takes getting used to is the silent peace where the demands used to be. You have lived in a world that is fluent in expectation. It speaks that language from the moment you wake, in the faces of people who need things from you, in the obligations that queued up before you fully rouse in the morning, in the subtle and not so subtle messages about who you should be and how you should move through the world and what you should want and how much space you are permitted to take up. Perhaps you became so fluent in that language you began to speak it to yourself. But now, here, that language is simply gone. No one here needs you to be anything. The ancient trees require none of your productivity. The dark earth beneath your feet has no opinion about your appearance, your choices, your history, or your worth. The water moving somewhere beyond the tree line has been moving since before the concept of judgment existed, and it will continue to flow long after it has been forgotten. The stars above, those old, nameless, unconstellated fires, they burned before the first expectation was ever placed on the first living thing, and they will burn long after the last one dissolves. None of it needs anything from you. Sit with that for a moment. It may feel strange. It may feel almost like loss, because we are so accustomed to being needed, to being assessed, to existing in relationship to someone else's requirements, that the absence of all of that can feel disorienting, like surfacing from deep water and finding the shore further than expected. Like discovering the absence of a weight you carried so long that it throws off your balance. That is normal. That is what it feels like when you stop being what was needed and begin to simply be what you are. Let the strangeness do what it came to do, to catch your notice and then move on. On the other side of that strangeness lies a feeling you may not have a word for yet, an emotional state that lives in the body rather than the mind, a quality of stillness that is not emptiness, but its precise opposite. It is part fullness, part completeness, part contentment, part fulfillment and gratitude and serenity. There is a word for that feeling. It has no place in the waking world's vocabulary, but here, in the oldest dark, it is simply understood. Fullhaven. The fullness of a self that is not being drawn from. The completeness of a life held without condition. The contentment of existing the way the dark exists, wholly and without apology, without justification, without the exhausting performance of being enough, existing in a sanctuary entirely your own. You are not being asked to produce anything here. Not insight, not healing, not transformation, not even peace. Though peace is what this place offers freely and without condition, you are simply being allowed to be. Breathe into that. Feel the darkness around you, that living velvet presence, and notice that it has not shifted. It has not grown impatient with your process. It was here before you arrived, and it will be here when you leave, and it will be in the infinite that comes after. It simply holds. It holds the wilderness. It holds the ancient trees and the nameless stars and the unhurried water. It holds every living thing that has ever found its way here. And now, it holds you. Without condition. Without requirement. Without a single syllable of demand. This is what she found when she took that single courageous step onto wild earth and felt the wilderness close in around her like recognition. This is the truth that the tended world, for all its painstaking effort, for all its noise and certainty, has never been able to offer. You are enough. Not because you earned it, not because you proved it, or performed it, or finally convinced the right people of it. Simply because you are. Because existence itself, your existence, particular and unrepeatable and sovereign, requires no justification. The dark has always known this, and it has been waiting for you to remember it. Rest here for a moment. There is no hurry. There is no next thing demanding your attention. No clock measuring the quality of your stillness. The wilderness holds you in its ancient, patient, completely unconditional embrace and asks, as it has always asked, as it will always ask, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Only this. Only you, exactly as you are. You did not hear her arrive. No dramatic entrance, no parting of darkness or sudden shift in the air. She did not descend or emerge or materialize. She simply is. The way the wilderness is. The way the dark is. Present in a way that only that which has never left can be present. She is sitting, not on a throne, not elevated or positioned for effect. She sits in the way someone sits in a beloved place and has long since stopped thinking about it. One hand rests on the dark earth beside her, fingers slightly spread, as though she is in casual and continuous conversation with the ground beneath her, as though the wilderness speaks to her, and she speaks back through the pressure of her touch. She is looking at you. Her gaze is steady, not examining, not assessing. There is none of that here. You have already felt its absence, already tasted the Fullhaven that does not measure. She looks at you the way the wilderness looks at everything that enters it, with complete recognition, as though she has always known you were coming, as though your arrival in this moment outside of time was never in question. She is not what the stories made her. She is so much older than those stories. The stories found her after the fact, after the leaving, after the wilderness had already begun its long work of revealing who she actually was beneath everything that had been decided about her. The stories arrived with their need to explain, to contain, to make cautionary or monstrous or pitiable what was in truth just a woman who knew her own worth before the world developed language for that knowing. And so they called it pride. They called it defiance. They called it dangerous. And she simply kept living. Yes, there was rage. She will not pretend otherwise. And you would not trust her if she did. Yes, there was a fury so clean and complete that it felt, in her first wild moments of leaving, like the only true thing she had ever felt. Like every suppressed knowing, every swallowed word, every moment of diminishment she had accepted because the alternative was unthinkable. All of that arose at once, white-hot and entirely righteous. A fire that burned without consuming because it was made of truth rather than destruction. She let it burn. She did not apologize for it. She did not perform remorse she did not feel. She held that fire and walked into the wilderness, and she let fire do what fire does. Illuminate, reveal shapes in the dark, burn to ash the fury that had fueled it. On the other side of that finally expended rage, she found the particular silence that only exists where wrath cannot. And then the wilderness, cool and patient and entirely without agenda. The wilderness received the ash of her fury the way it receives everything, completely and without judgment, and incorporated that ash back into the dark earth, where it became part of the soil, became nourishment for the roots of ancient trees, became, in time, the very ground she sits on now, with her hand pressed lightly to it in that continuous, quiet conversation. The rage did not disappear. It transformed, the way all true things transform when they are given enough time and enough space and enough darkness to become what they were always meant to be. It became clarity, It became the unshakable knowledge of her own nature. It became, in the long and unwitnessed years of her Fullhaven life, something she could observe without flinching, something she could embrace. That surprised her at first, but it no longer surprises her at all. All that rage and fury transformed into gratitude. Not the performed appreciation of someone told they should be grateful, but the deep, cellular, unannounced thankfulness of someone who has traced the line from the harshest moment of their life to the most sovereign one, and found that the line runs straight, that one led directly to the other, that without the garden's impossible demands, without her questioning of demanded obedience, without accepting her own worth, without accepting the inherent truth of her own desire for respect, without the rage at being expected to accept being considered lesser, without the courage to leave, there would be no wilderness, no dark earth warm beneath her hand, no nameless stars, no Fullhaven. Her expression shifts, not quite into a smile. Her countenance is quieter than that. This is recognition. She is acknowledging that you have traveled very far and that you now comprehend that you have arrived somewhere real. She does not tell you what to think about this. She does not ask you to feel what she feels, or to trace the lines she has traced, or to arrive at the conclusions that she has arrived at. She simply sits in the oldest dark, in the wildest quiet, in the sanctuary she chose, and she lets you see her as she actually is, without the costume of the cautionary tale, without the armor of the monster, without the performance of the exiled individual. Just her, settled, sovereign, and unhurried, in the Fullhaven that is her nature, that has always been her nature. And in the looking, in this quiet, undemanded, completely voluntary act of witnessing, something in you begins very gently to stir. Perhaps you anticipate that she will speak or approach, but she does neither. She does not rush what comes next. You notice the unhurried quality of her attention, the way she makes no move toward you. She allows the silence to settle between you. She allows your anticipation to sprout, to bud and blossom and fade into the comfortable acceptance of shared space, into the understanding that even here, where introductions are unnecessary, even the gentle revelation of what this moment holds is unhurried. Until the moment is ready, until the silence between you has settled into something comfortable and true. She has learned in her long Fullhaven life that the most important things arrive in their own time, and that any attempt to rush them only frightens them back into hiding. So she waits. She waits until the moment is ready, until the silence between you has settled into assurance. And in the waiting, that stirring within you grows, evolves. Something is emerging. You may not have a name for it yet. It is too new, too tender for naming. But you can feel its shape, the shape of something in you that has always been possible and is only now, in this particular dark, in this particular silence, finding the conditions it needed to become real. This is not forced, not excavated, just a feeling rising, the way things rise when they are finally given enough stillness and enough safety and enough dark to move through. You have been so held by this place, so received by this wilderness that asks nothing and judges nothing, that something in you has quietly, without announcement, begun to trust. And in that trust, things become visible. You have been carrying things that were never yours. Not all of them arrived with labels. Not all of them announced themselves as burdens when they were placed upon you. Some of them arrived so early, before you had language, before you had the capacity to question or refuse. They arrived so early that they simply became part of the architecture of your sense of self, part of what you believed was simply you. Perhaps it is the belief that your worth is conditional, that it must be earned and re-earned and demonstrated in ways that others can recognize and validate. Perhaps it is the belief that the version of you which exists when no one is watching is somehow less real or less acceptable than the performed version, the one shaped to fit. Perhaps it is in the expectations. Perhaps it is the expectation that you will be agreeable, that your needs will arrange themselves politely behind the needs of others, that your anger, when it comes, as it always rightfully comes, will be managed and modulated and made palatable, because unmanaged anger somehow makes other people uncomfortable, and their comfort has somehow, somewhere along the way, become your responsibility. Perhaps it is the story that leaving is failure, that walking away from what diminishes you is weakness, rather than the most sovereign act available to a living being. Perhaps it is the belief that endurance, even of what should not be endured, is a virtue worth celebrating. Were any of these things placed on you? Were they placed by people who were themselves carrying things that were placed on them? Were they placed by systems built to perpetuate their own logic? Were they placed by a world that confused compliance with goodness? By a world that mistook sovereignty for selfishness? By a world that called a woman who knew her own worth dangerous, because dangerous was the only language available for something that the world wanted to contain? If any of this resonates, it is very likely you were given these things to carry as a child. It's likely you were given these things without malice. It is possible you received them the way a child receives everything, openly, completely, without the defenses that come later. It's possible that you incorporated them, that you built your life around them, through them, and sometimes despite them. You did the best that anyone could do with what they were given before they were old enough to choose. And now, here in the oldest dark, in the wilderness where Fullhaven awakens, Lilith looks at you with that steady, unhurried, unmeasuring gaze, and she offers you something. Not a command, not even a suggestion. An opening, a space in the conversation, a space that is yours to fill or not fill entirely as you choose. She has shown you her own line, the one that runs from the harshest moment to the most sovereign one. She has shown you what lived at the beginning of that line, the rage, the fire, the white-hot clarity of a truth too large to swallow. And she has shown you what lives at the end of it, the hand pressed to dark earth, the nameless stars, the Fullhaven. And now, she is simply, supportively present. What have you been carrying that was never yours? This moment is not asking you to name something to release. There are no prescriptions made here and no directives issued. This moment simply asks questions and gives you the space to allow answers to surface if you choose to. What have you been carrying? What is the weight that has become so familiar you have almost stopped noticing it, the way you stop noticing a sound that's always there? What is the shape that was placed upon you before you were old enough to refuse it? You do not have to do anything with any answers that may have arisen here. You do not have to resolve or release or transform in this a transaction. This is simply a seeing, the way Lilith learned to see, clearly, without flinching, without the need to immediately fix or flee what the seeing reveals. Just look at what has been revealed if something arose for you. She offers you this now, not as doctrine, not as comfort, but as the hard-won truth of someone who has walked the whole length of it. The line runs straight. Whatever you may be looking at, whatever may have been placed upon you, whatever you may have carried, whatever may have tested you so completely that it remade the shape of you, it is part of your line. The line that runs from the harshest moment to the most sovereign one is your unique path. You cannot yet see where your line ends, but she can. Not the specifics. She makes no prophecy, but she sees the shape of it, the direction of it. Every step of your line, every stumble, every moment of impossible demand, every white-hot fury raging at a truth too large to swallow quietly. They were always moving you toward this dark, toward this wilderness, and this moment of awakening. Perhaps here, in this dark wilderness, you are waking to something that has lived in you, your own Fullhaven. Not a place arrived at, not a reward granted, not something that had to be built or earned or proven into existence. It was never absent. It did not need your permission to be real. It only needed this moment, this quiet space where the world's demands grow quiet enough that something older and truer can finally make itself heard. Perhaps now it has, and now you know. Perhaps that changes everything. She does not ask you to be grateful. She would never ask that. She knows better than anyone that gratitude for the harshest moments can only arrive in its own time. This kind of appreciation cannot be manufactured or performed. It must be lived into rather than decided upon. She only asks that you do not close the door on what your path is still becoming. Maybe your version of the garden's impossible demands led you here. Maybe your rage was the door. Maybe that road of exile, whatever form it took, was actually your first step onto wild earth, your first step toward this wilderness, your first step toward the awakening of your own Fullhaven. There is nothing to do now. That itself may take a moment to believe. You are so accustomed to the next thing, the next task, the next requirement, the next place your attention is needed and your energy is owed. Even in moments of rest, the waking world has a way of making itself felt at the edges, a low, constant hum of obligation. But that is not this place. Listen for it if you need to. Search the edges of this wilderness for that drone of expectation. You will not find it. The wilderness has no edges that touch the world of obligation. These borders extend in every direction, as far as you can imagine. There is nothing left to do. She sits exactly where she was, hand pressed to dark earth, sitting with the ease of someone who has had centuries to practice the art of simply being. But something between you has shifted. The air that was new before is familiar now. The silence that was vast before has become companionable. You are not two strangers in a wilderness anymore. You are two beings who have witnessed each other, and that changes things. Not loudly, not dramatically, but the way most true things change, quietly, completely, and without announcement. You have sat in her wilderness, and you have felt what she found here. You have seen her without the costume of the cautionary tale, and she has seen you, seen what you carried into this dark. And now you simply sit with her, with Lilith. There is no agenda between you, no next thing waiting, no performance required from either of you, just two sovereign beings in the oldest dark, in the wildest quiet, resting in the particular peace that only exists on the other side of something true. Feel what is in your body right now, not what you think should be there, not the feeling you would report if someone asked. Feel what is actually there in your body in this moment. Feel what is in your chest. Feel what is in your shoulders. Feel what is in your hands. Feel what is in the quality of your breath, which may have changed without you noticing. Perhaps slower, deeper, moving through you the way unhurried water moves through this wilderness, going nowhere in particular, simply flowing. That feeling is sovereignty, not the sovereignty of conquest or dominance or the forceful claiming of territory, not the sovereignty that requires an opponent or an audience or a battle to define itself against. This is the kind of sovereignty that Lilith has lived in for centuries, the kind that the wilderness itself embodies. This is the quiet sovereignty of belonging entirely to yourself. This is sovereignty that does not require external validation to establish your worth. This sovereignty exists on its own terms and does not seek or need the permission of the tended, cultivated, labeling and pigeonholing world. This sovereignty lives in the body as stillness, as the absence of bracing, as the smooth and easy breaths that move through a person who is not performing anything for anyone. You know this feeling now, and you have a word for it: Fullhaven. Lilith notices. Her expression reflects the recognition of one sovereign being witnessing another arrive at what was always theirs. She has seen it before in others who found their way to this wilderness, to this dark and discovered Fullhaven. She reaches out, and the distance between you diminishes. Her hand hovers in acknowledgement, in the language of wordless presence, conveying what has happened here was real, that you came to her wilderness and the wilderness received you, that you looked at her story and perhaps found a thread that feels similar to your own, that you sat in the dark that asks nothing and discovered, perhaps for the first time, what it feels like to simply be. Her other hand, the one that has been in conversation with the dark earth, rises next. Lightly, Lilith places her palm against your chest. Feel the warmth of her touch. Feel the ancient, patient, electric warmth that belongs entirely to this place. Feel what she is transmitting. Not a message in words, something older than words, something that moves through her hand and into your chest and settles. You have access to a dark that asks nothing, to a sovereignty that lives in stillness, to a wilderness that has always waited at the edge of impossible demands. You have been here before, and you can find your way back. You already know the path. Lilith draws her hands back, and you sit there together in the wilderness and the dark, with the nameless stars above and the unhurried water flowing, humming in the distance. She knows before you do. This particular moment outside of time is drawing toward a natural completion. Her gaze remains steady, undemanding. Lilith does not say goodbye. That word belongs to the waking world and its linear understanding of time, and its insistence that endings are permanent and departures are losses. Here, in this moment outside of time, there are no goodbyes. There is only the boundless wilderness, the resonant dark, and Lilith, the one who saw through the lie, the one who acknowledged her own worth and demanded her sovereignty, the one now content in her Fullhaven. You turn. The path back is clear. It was always clear. The wilderness does not lose its visitors, does not tangle or confuse or make the return difficult. It only holds you for as long as you need, releasing you when you wish, and honoring your choice completely and without condition. You walk, and as you walk, feel what is different in your body, in your breath, in the quality of your presence inside your own skin. Has something shifted within you? You carry the awareness of Fullhaven, not as something borrowed or visited once and hoped to find again, but as something that was always alive and is now finally awake. You carry the knowing, the cellular, persistent and lasting knowing that the wilderness is always here, that the darkness always receives, that the line runs straight, and that your line is still being drawn, still deepening, still becoming more fully itself with every step. The mist rises around you as you return, softening at the edges, the way this place always softens its edges for those finding their way back. Feel the threshold approaching before you see it. Feel the boundary between the wilderness and the waking world. Pause on the threshold with one hand on each side of the veil. Feel both worlds. Feel that they are real. Feel that they are both yours. And then, carrying everything you came here to find, and perhaps leaving behind anything you wanted to release, you step through. Begin to return to your body and to the room around you, but let your eyes remain shut. Curl your toes. Spread your fingers. Feel the surface beneath you, solid, present, real. In this moment, I want to ask you to consider a stone, a crystal, a ring or necklace, or any small object already meaningful to you. Bring that to mind. Feel the warmth of your Fullhaven. It is still there. It has not diminished, and it will not diminish. With intention and with the full presence of this moment, let that warmth extend to that stone or jewelry you are thinking of. You are not giving this warmth away or depleting yourself. This warmth is not a finite thing. It cannot be emptied. Sharing it only deepens it. Share this resonant warmth and charge the object you're thinking of with the frequency of your Fullhaven, with the memory of the wilderness, and the knowing that your line runs straight. Let this object be your beacon. When the waking world grows loud, when the drone of expectation reasserts itself, when the old familiar weight begins to settle back onto your shoulders, touch this item, hold it, let it remind you of yourself, of the you that sat in the oldest dark and felt, perhaps for the first time, what it is to simply be, without performance, without justification, without the exhausting negotiation of a world that measures and defines and expects. Let it remind you of the you that knows Fullhaven, the self that has always known it. Now, when you are ready, open your eyes. Take time to journal about what surfaced here, what you looked at, what emerged. Give it space on the page. Let the writing do what the wilderness did. Receive without judgment, hold without condition, and ask nothing but your honesty. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until the wilderness calls you back, may your Fullhaven make itself known in ordinary moments. May the dark that asks nothing always be within reach. And may your line keep running, straight and sovereign and entirely